Hello, and welcome to my webinar on the history of U.S. soccer since 1877. I'm going to give a brief outline of where we will be going today in this presentation, and then we will jump right in. Today we will cover the history of the creation of organized soccer in the United States. Then we will move into a detailed timeline of major and important events over our specified time period. We will then move into uniforms and uniform development over the years. I will cover 3 separate advertisements to show the progression of quality and media messages. Next, we will cover the World Cup and larger, more relevant impacts of the World Cup today. I want to highlight a problem that U.S. soccer has faced and how they have both dealt with and progressed in dealing with that problem. And then finally, I will close with why this topic is important and why I talk about soccer. So let's jump right in. Originally, soccer was played recreationally for upper-class boys and eventually evolved to the college level. The game was not traditional soccer, it was a mix of rugby and soccer together. Eventually, soccer became a primarily working-class sport, and the American Football Association formed, as well as the creation of the American Cup in 1885. In the late 1890s, soccer popularity decreased drastically in the U.S., and many thought that the sport would cease to exist. In the late 1890s was the Spanish-American War, so that could have maybe contributed to the temporary decrease of popularity in the sport. But no information that I found showed why there was a decrease, but that's just maybe a guess that I have. And then the U.S. St. Louis Soccer League participated in the 1904 Olympics, winning a gold medal. This sparked a new fire for soccer in the U.S. And this same team, the St. Louis Soccer League, went pro in 1906. Soccer was officially founded in the United States by the United States Football Association in 1913. The name of the organization has evolved over the years and today is known as the U.S. Soccer Federation, or the USSF. The U.S.'s membership was accepted into FIFA in 1914, and we will cover that in our timeline. So a little did you know fact. The first team to win the American Cup in 1885 was called Our New Thread, or ONT, because the team was sponsored by a sewing manufacturing company. So the more you know. This here is the first logo for the United States Soccer Association. All right, so jumping into a timeline. So between 1865 and 1876, soccer is initiated as an organized college sport following the Civil War. In 1884, the American Football Association is organized in New Jersey. In 1904, FIFA is formed. We are not a part of FIFA quite yet. We'll get there later on. Oh, and in 1914, the USFA, or the U.S. Football Association, is granted full membership to FIFA. In 1923, the world's first indoor soccer league was created with full-size field, and that was in Boston. In 1930, the U.S. is one of 13 teams to compete in the first FIFA World Cup in Uruguay. In 1945, the U.S. changes its name to USSFA. You'll see lots of name changes throughout this timeline here. In 1950, Joe Gatchins from the USA scores against England at the World Cup in Brazil. This was called the biggest upset in ever in international soccer, partly because of just Brazil's presence in soccer and their winning streak that they had. In 1974, the USSFA changes its name to USSF. In 1982, The U.S. makes a formal bid to host the 1986 World Cup. A year later, the bid is rejected and given to Mexico instead. In 1985, the USWNT, or the United States Women's National Team, is officially organized. In 1990, the U.S. competes in the World Cup for the first time in 40 years. And then in 1991, the USWNT won the first ever FIFA Women's World Cup Championship in China. And shortly after that, in 1994, the U.S. hosts the World Cup all over the country, including California, Florida, New Jersey, and Texas. In 1996, the USWNT won their first ever Olympic gold medal. In 1999, the U.S. host and win the Women's World Cup in California. In 2001, Mia Hamm wins FIFA Women's World Cup Player of the Year. And in 2004, the USWNT win an Olympic gold medal. So you will see the women's team was formed and then made a very large presence quickly in U.S. soccer history. In 2012, the USWNT win an Olympic gold medal. In 2013, U.S. soccer celebrates its 100 years. And also in 2013, Abby Wambach surpasses Mia Hamm's scoring record of 158, and she scores 163 goals, career goals. And in 2024, the USWNT win an Olympic gold medal. All right, so moving on to uniforms. Now it is time for you to guess. So, which uniform do you think was the very first uniform in 1916? You can go ahead and pause the video and take your best guess. All right. So, the correct answer is this one here. And which uniform do you think was the 1990 uniform? Go ahead and pause. Alrighty, and the correct answer is number 3. And the 1994 uniform, go ahead and pause. The correct answer is alrighty, and last but not least, which uniform was the 2023? The correct answer is, so hopefully you got 100% like I did. All right, so moving on to advertisements. So here we're going to see the very first ever World Cup advertisement. So this is supposed to be a depiction of an action shot of a player. My assumption is that this would be a picture of a goalkeeper, maybe jumping and getting a ball out of the goal. You can see the orange like crossbars there. So many of the advertisements in the early years of the World Cup mimicked players' action shots, and then later switched to more of a focus on the FIFA World Cup trophy. Here we see just some classic Budweiser advertisement for U.S. soccer. We also see some more advertisements, TV or this would be a poster, but advertising to watch the World Cup on the big screen. So getting the involvement of U.S. soccer. Here we see a 2015 advertisement. This was actually called the launch of the She Believes campaign. This was all about encouraging young women to reach their hopes and dreams, athletic or not athletic. This is still an active campaign today, and They hold a summit yearly where there is professional development and then just empowering women, both young and old, to yeah, chase their dreams. I'll play this video.
What's your dream? To win championships? A scholarship? Do you want to be a bigger athlete than Serena Williams? Or do you want to be the first girl to play for the Yankees? Can you be the generation that ends gender inequality? Or will you show that champions in your sport can also look like you? Maybe your dream is to be the first 13-year-old to go pro. Or to push a sport to accept everyone just as they are. But the craziest dream of all is the one that starts a million more.
All right, so that is definitely an inspiring advertisement. I remember when that came out in 2015. As a young high schooler, just watching the World Cup and being excited about how well the women were doing in that year's World Cup. And yeah, just a very touching advertisement that still has a lot of impact today. So this link here just takes us to the She Believes page on the U.S. Soccer website, and I highly recommend checking that out. So, on to the World Cup and its larger impacts. So, the World Cup is one of the most prestigious and widely viewed sporting events around the globe. It provides immense entertainment for viewers worldwide, gives platforms for political movements, gives hosting countries an opportunity to share show their economic standings, and ultimately determines the best national soccer team worldwide for both men and women. In the coming World Cup, the U.S. gets a chance to host this World Cup will be the 2026 World Cup. You to be accepted as a host for the World Cup, you have to go through a process to submit a formal request to FIFA, which is the global soccer governing body, and receive an official grant to host. The U.S. has only hosted the World Cup once in 1994, and it has hosted the Women's World Cup twice in 1999 and in 2003. So this is just kind of the schedule of the hosting cities, and they will be partnering with Canada and Mexico in order to get all of the games in. This is predicted to be produce more than $5 billion in economic activity and a net value of $3 to $4 billion. The World Cup will also support 40,000 jobs temporarily to get ready. And this is supposed to be the largest upcoming World Cup in history with 48 teams in the bracket. So some problems over US, I just want to bring up and highlight the women in equal pay movement. So in March of 2019, 28 members of the US filed a lawsuit against the USSF. The argument for the pay discrepancy is the different collective bargaining agreements, or CBAs, that the USSF had with the women's team and with the men's team. Regardless of the CBA, the USWNT, as we can tell from our timeline and history overview, has a better overall winning record and gives the USSF more publicity and brings in more overall revenue. If you don't know what a CBA is, A CBA is a legally binding negotiation between an employer and the union representative on behalf of employees. But history was made in 2022. The USSF changed their CBA agreement and made history, becoming the first ever to achieve equal pay between women's and men's soccer. This not only equalized salary, but also provided health and safety policies and data privacy for the players. Despite this victory, there is still more progress to be made for the developments and support of women's sports in the US and in other countries, but also just in equalizing women's opportunities in general outside of sports. And these women really are paving a way for other movements and encouragement for policies to change. So, what's the big deal? Why talk about soccer in the United States? I think that soccer is really important, not only for the competition. We love good competition. We see this not only in sports, but in schools are competitive. And yeah, we thrive off of competition. And not only do we thrive off of competition, but competition often also drives unity. And we just see soccer really bringing communities together, communities of all different backgrounds all over the US. And specifically with the World Cup, we see lots of communities coming together, which is why I think this is really important to talk about. As our country can be really divided at times. And this is something that we can all come together and share a love for sport and country on. The revenue that the World Cup brings in, but also that soccer brings in, and also the jobs that it brings in. But I really wanted to just touch on this unifying piece of soccer and how not only can we unify ourselves within the US, but also connect with other countries over shared love of sport. So, thank you so much for watching this presentation. A common question that I received in some of the chats have been who made the US soccer uniforms before Adidas in 1977? And it is really unclear that we don't really know who made the uniforms because they used to be a lot simpler and not as heavy of material. I'm going to jump back to the uniforms talk really quickly. And typically, the home kits are white with like a white base and have a blue accent over the trim. We can see that in a couple of our home kits here. We see the blue trim and the white base. And currently, Nike has been branded as the U.S. soccer uniform since 1995, but Adidas used to be until 1974. But before then, it's really unclear who exactly made the uniform. So, yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to contact me. But thank you so much for watching.